Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm Jim West, CEO and founder of TopCyberPro.com. I got a great guest today, and we're going to be talking about a subject that matters to everyone out there, no matter who you are, what you do. This is going to apply to you. So sit back and then just take this in because we're talking something that everybody says they care about. But when you really start to talk to people about it and start to share information about it, they either do one or two things. They either want to just say, no, I don't care about that, or they feel possibly stupid when they start to understand really the importance that this subject has today. But without further ado, I want to introduce the CEO and one of the founders of Unplugged.com, which they have a brilliant hardware device at Upphone, if I got that correct. But I have Ryan Paterson here with me today. Ryan, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
The why behind Unplugged.com, if you will.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. I'm really glad to be here, and thanks for the little bit of a conversation there ahead of time. As Jim said, my name is Ryan Paterson. I'm the CEO of Unplugged. I'm actually not one of the founders. My good friend Eric Prince reached out to me about 3 years ago and said, "Hey, I could really use your help." I thought I was sort of done CEO at that point in time, and so he reeled me back in.
Pulled you back in.
He did. Just a little background on myself. I spent 12 years in the Marine Corps. I was an armor officer. There are no more of those in the Marine Corps. We have no more tanks. And in that role, I also got to go work at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab and got to serve a tour at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, in uniform. And that was a really great opportunity. Did some work there on command and control, took some technology forward into Iraq back then. Left DARPA, left the uniform, had met a bunch of really great CEOs of small businesses, folks that had come out of industry and academia and started getting their hands dirty in small business world. And I was really fascinated by it. And so then I started poking around in that and started a little consulting firm. That didn't work out. Started another company called IST Research. We had 3 very different chapters in that company. Went back to DARPA in the middle of that for 2 years. Spent a better part of 2 years in and out of Afghanistan, taking technology from DARPA forward for operational experimentation. We left a ton of gear back for folks to use out of the entire DARPA portfolio. Came back, and then sort of IST Research had its final chapter. We spent a lot of time working in the world of information operations for those in the defense world, strategic communications if you're at state, other things if you're at other agencies. And our goal there was, how do you collect and interact with people in various different technology penetrations? So from feature phones and broadcast radio in Afghanistan at the time, that was it. That was how people got information and exchanged information, all the way up through smartphones. And we built a platform called Pulse, and then in 2020, I was lucky enough to sell my company to the Carlyle Group, and it is now part of a larger organization called 26 Technologies, and I continue to sit on as an advisor there, and they continue to do great things. So took some time off. Eric grabbed me and brought me back into Unplugged. And our whole goal with Unplugged is to make privacy convenient. We think that privacy is such an important piece of what everybody should believe, and I just think for the most part, the average consumer has no idea how much of their data, their pattern of life, their history is owned by other people and sold in brokered exchanges every single day for small amounts of dollars. So a few experiments that I'll show people, and some things that I actually did when I was at DARPA. We did some projects on counter human trafficking, and we used several different pathways to sort of understand and look at human trafficking networks, and just using a little bit of mobile advertising ID data. And you don't need to know much of anything about the person. You need to know 1 or 2 pieces of places they've been at a time, and that's really it. And there was this one group that we were going after, and we knew the guy had somebody related to him that went to one school. We knew a place that he might have gone to, a restaurant we didn't know where anybody lived, and it was 3 pieces of data. You can go in and query and say, like, show me all the mobile advertising ideas that were in all 3 of those locations. And that's not a big overlap set, right? There's if you can get some disparate points. And sure enough, we found 4 people. It was him and his partner, adult children. And then you can go, okay, show me where they were in the last 90 days, and I'll follow them every day. And the precision of that data should scare everybody, right? And then, we just heard recently, right? Every social security number in the United States was compromised in a data leak. And they were, that's what they first said, was like, just social security number. It's not much to do with that. Well, no, actually, it's your social security number, your name, your address, your date of birth, and a phone number. And with that information, you can get owned, right? And so they started to engage with the Unplugged team. That's what they were, they had some ideas what they wanted to do. They wanted to make a phone that was eminently private and away from those prying eyes. And so we ventured forth on a 3-prong approach. We've got a lot of people that have told us we're crazy for trying to do a hardware, we're crazy for trying to build our own phone. Hardware's hard. But I think if you're talking about a systemic privacy-focused ecosystem, and you're not having input on the hardware, the software, the operating system, the networks with which it transits, how it transits those networks, then right, there's always that threat can come in from any one of those areas. And so we're trying to address it holistically, right? So we offer the Up phone. We offer the Up suite, which provides secure messenger, VPN, antivirus, and our privacy center. And then we're trying to partner with mobile providers, MVNOs that are getting themselves focused on how can we provide just the network connection in the most private manner as possible. So we're trying to bring all 3 of those things together. And so here we are. That's where we are today. We manufactured the first 10,000 phones. We took delivery of those back at the end of April. I just placed the order for the next 10,000 phones. We've got about 2,000 left in inventory. So we're trying to get ready for folks that might be interested in giving the gift of privacy this holiday season.
So that's a lot of information that Ryan has given you just right there in just the introduction. So I just want to kind of back up on a couple of things he said and kind of expand upon the importance of these things. When he's mentioning their own VPN, their own secure VPN that's embedded in the phone. When you're dealing with a VPN, you're connecting into a gateway somewhere, and because you're extending that network to wherever you are in the world. So that's how VPN works. It's not you connecting into the network is being literally extended to you. So for example, if you're in Germany and you want to watch an NFL game, you have to use a VPN, because normally if you have a German or European IP address, that content is restricted from that region of the world. So you then extend, whether it's New York, DC, or whatever location, you extend that network out to. But when that traffic is going over that gateway, you kind of don't know what's being intercepted, monitored, and of course, there's all other legal implications like DCMA that I won't get onto here because that's another rabbit hole. But the bottom line is, when you're using a VPN, whether you paid for it or using a free one, you really don't know what's being done with your traffic as it goes through that point of presence. Whereas if them having their own private VPN, they can have certain assurances and guidelines and approaches to whether they keep logs or not, whether they anonymize the logs, which I've already done the research. They do anonymize. They have no records of that traffic other than the session happened. That's it. They don't track anything for the end user. And so that right there is a huge privacy advantage over just any other VPN app in the market. The second thing he mentioned that's in the phone that's really crucial is you obviously got to worry about threats and attacks like malware and other things to the software. So having their own antivirus, and that's kind of crucial to have their own private, insurance. Because if you're using a third party like any, Norton or any type of named antivirus, you're trusting that other business. They have kind of what I call a hook into that phone or device OS. So by having their own antivirus is another very proactive approach for privacy on a phone. So just those 2 things alone leapfrogs you ahead of pretty much 99% of the smartphone market in terms of privacy and security. So I applaud you guys for taking a very serious approach to providing that level of privacy for folks. I know that you mentioned already, your work with DARPA and several other businesses, and I applaud you also your service as a Marine. Thank you for your service, and then continuing to serve because again, this is not something that is, I would call, an easy thing to do when you're working with a business where people are all focused on just the dollar amount. The bottom line is, oh, well, I can get a phone that's $200. I can get a phone that's cheap, and I heard about there's these three settings. I set these three settings on a phone, and I'm good. But people don't understand that with embedded applications on mobile devices, and I'm only talking mobile devices, right? We're not going to talk the bigger, there's a bigger problem that we're not going to deep
Sure,
dive in this
sure.
discussion for supply chain tampering, but we're just going to talk mobile devices. One of the biggest culprits, especially with the, let's just say Android-based phones, because we won't talk Apple right now, but for the larger market, the global market is predominantly Android-based. And with that being
Correct.
said, there's a lot of what's called embedded applications that are baked into that phone, Google apps. And, a lot of folks may have a favorable opinion of Google, but our country historically has not had a favorable relation with Google due to certain things related to other nation states like China, as a great example. But and they've kind of been last out of the big cloud providers to kind of meet all the compliancy and regulation requirements for using U.S. government data. But back to the point of the individual, what people don't understand is these embedded apps, it's like they don't understand how much information, every keystroke is captured, every search you do on the internet, everything is captured and logged on a server somewhere. Your phone is just sending it out.
Correct.
And people don't understand because they don't have enough knowledge to monitor all the processes and all the services. It also eats away battery life. So even if you're a person, and let's say your first argument is, Jim, I could care less about privacy. I have nothing to hide. Okay, let's just talk it from an efficiency of your phone. Your battery, because of these, what I will call adware/spyware type of apps that are embedded in your phone that are legal per US government laws right now, that are embedded on your phone, is probably sapping anywhere from 30 to as much as 60% of the battery life on your phone. So if you're the kind of person that says, man, I always got to have my phone on a charger, a backup battery, it's always, draining so fast. Usually it's coming from these culprits of embedded applications. So first thing, if you care about having better battery life, you should care about these embedded apps that are draining. Two, it is taking your information to include contacts on your phone, photos, any kind of data at all that you do on your phone can be digitized and sent up to some server and sold or potentially built in a portfolio to be used against you somewhere down the road to be determined. And most people say, well, China's not going to come after me or whatever. It doesn't have to be China, which we'll probably talk some use cases a little bit later because I definitely want to get back to Ryan here because again, the work that Unplugged, the folks that Unplugged are doing is just phenomenal. One of the things I wanted to ask you is that I really like your commitment for the continuous improvement, right? Because you and your team,
Yeah.
so some of the things that I've read online is you guys are always welcome to taking in feedback and working it. And it's not like you made this, it's like, okay, we're done. You guys are in it. You're in it for the long haul. So can you kind of speak on your continuous improvement
Yeah.
programs and maybe some of the things that you have on the horizon that have yet, soon to be announced?
Sure. Sure. I want to go back just a minute to your, using the resources thing. One of the anecdotal pieces we got, I've had a couple of users who, they don't have an unlimited data plan. They pay per data, and they've sent me their bills, the total of their bills, and like when they made the switch and went over here, right? So that like if you're paying per bit coming off your phone, we saw people who had 25% lower phone bills, 25% because of some of the things that we block, right? So no mobile ad ID on the phone, and it's not just the embedded apps. The whole app ecosphere has all of these trackers that go in it, right? The story I always tell is Spotify. I never thought Spotify was going to be a big privacy issue. It's my favorite place to get music. The apps that they or the trackers that they have embedded in Spotify and LinkedIn. Oh my gosh, LinkedIn, right? So the number of trackers there. And so we block all of the trackers, right? So yes, you're still interacting with that. Like, yes, Spotify still knows it's my phone. They still know my playlists. They know Kenny Chesney's going to come up every third song or something like that, right? But the other things that they were taking off of my phone, you didn't realize it. So you turn on our tracker blocker and all that stops. In terms of the continuous improvement stuff, yeah, like we are very much a small business. We're very much a startup. We have channels in our messenger, the early adopters channel, the Teach Me Geek, And so we're engaged with the customers. I'm engaged with customers all the time, and so we do have channels, and people are asking for a lot of things. But again, we're a team of about 30 total, between the engineering team and then sort of the product success team. And we're continuing doing things. I think one of the biggest things that we're excited about is we're getting ready to roll out the OS kernel, all of our antivirus and other open source, right? So that's one of the hits that I continue to see. Like, hey, it's not open source. I'm like, yeah, like to be a good contributor to the open source, like you need to have everything locked down, everything documented. And so we're in the process of doing that. We're also hiring somebody specifically to come in on Messenger, on our Messenger application. So it's built on open source, and we're bringing somebody in specifically to contribute only to that open source project of Element, Matrix/Element. And so like we're hiring somebody specifically, and they're going to work on the core product. And so those are some of the things that we continue to do. And and it's anybody that's ever done a startup will know and understand that there's limited resources. There's only so much you can do in a day, and we've got version 1 of the phones out in the streets, and our biggest focus right now is to make sure that those customers are taken care of. Yeah, and we also do know it's a lift. This is going to be hard for some people to get started. I wrote a blog post the other day, and it just reminded me of when I left the Marine Corps and DARPA at the same time. I was leaving the world of Windows and BlackBerry, and like all of the tech guys that I dealt with were on Apple products, and so I immediately went out and bought a MacBook and bought an iPhone. And I didn't know what was what anywhere. And I had this piece of paper that was like, what's it called on my iPhone or on my Apple? And I literally had it in my briefcase, because you get there, you quickly get to the place that you're like, okay, I know this is still familiar. This is still all of those things. This is still convenient. But I'm giving up less data. So.
Okay. So, Ryan, when you're working with these very huge projects, and even as a startup, you're trying to really change, perception and culture of privacy, right, in and of itself.
Right.
And so I know myself when I have discussions, whether even if it's with my peers in the industry or just regular folks who seem to, not really care about privacy, and not to kind of go into the rabbit hole of like the Edward Snowden revelations, but it is important to the privacy discussion, because that was the first time in recent history where individual did something, again, regardless of your feelings of the individual of Edward Snowden. He did reveal that there was eavesdropping programs on a government level from our government. And but the point is it should have sparked a discussion for a lot of Americans to have about their own data privacy. But the general population just didn't seem to care, because the prevailing feedback or response to that was, I don't have nothing to hide. And that's a really big hurdle to get across. And I applaud you guys for working to that. So what would you say to that individual, and even the ones watching right now, that says, Jim, Ryan, sounds all great, but I ain't got nothing to hide. What would be your response to that?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned, they track everything you search, and I would say to anybody listening, would you be willing to have your entire search history made public for anybody to read, tied to your name, your phone number, and your email address? Would you be willing to do that? No, nobody would be willing to do that. But that's what we do, right? That's what this framework is. I remember the first time I thought about this. My kids were just entering middle school. So this is 12, 15 years ago. And Instagram had just come out, and every middle school kid had Instagram. And I started to watch. I told my kids, yes, you can have Instagram. You follow me, I follow you. And, I want to see all of that stuff. And then I started to realize that there were middle school kids had their entire account open in public. Anybody could follow them. They had the location on all of their pictures. And so like any kid, like I would see 13-year-old middle school kids with 900 friends, and then I'd scroll through the friends. I'm like, that's not a friend. Like, that person is not a friend. And then you could see where they went to school. Where did grandma and grandpa live? Where do they go after school? Where do they go on vacation? Where is home? What does the front of the house look like? What does the back of the house look like? And I don't think that's okay. And I don't think that should be purchasable by credit cards.
Well, Ryan, you're
by a credit
absolutely
card
right.
for
I
marketers.
mean, there's so many predators out there, and this is just, threats against children because
Yep.
children they just share. They don't even have the idea concepts of privacy yet, right? And so, as
Right.
parents, it's our job and responsibility to protect our children. But yet, we give them a phone at a certain age. Every kid nowadays in America gets a phone really, really early. And they don't understand it. Even if you had some monitoring tools, some parent tools, I know there's a lot of them out there, they're still not good enough because it's what the kids are putting out there, right? And so you just said it that you could build a complete profile within minutes. If a predator really wanted to target your kid, they could quickly, one, connect to them, which is scary in and of itself, but two, start to build a profile of their routine, where they live, what routes they take when they go home, where do they hang out after school, because a lot of us have to work till 5, 6 o'clock before we get home, and our kids are hanging out, malls, different eateries, etc. And so it doesn't take much for someone to quickly figure out a routine. And that goes the same for adults. I tell people when they say, well, what do I have to hide? I say, okay, let's say someone in your office, you work for, a big company in a big building, you hear that someone on the fourth floor end up getting diagnosed with some rare form of disease or cancer. And of course, we're curious, we're human beings. You pull up your browser, you pull up a search for it. Now there's a record that you search for this very rare, type of disease or cancer. And then let's say one day your route gets redirected, or you're using your Waze or whatever, and it says, "Hey, redirecting for a better route." You're like, "Well, I'm going to miss my Starbucks, but oh, there's a Starbucks right here. I'll just stop here." And then you park for a while, or you're in line for a while. Your geolocation is going to show that maybe you were near a cancer diagnosis clinic and that you did not claim in your insurance. And then your insurance could potentially have this information, and then they would make a decision based upon analytics, because all the stuff is done by computers. It's not like a team of people are looking through all the data. It's done by computers and AI.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it
Yeah.
could then do a probability score on you that you might have a pre un, or un I'm trying to think of the term, but you may have a condition,
An undisclosed illness. Yeah.
undisclosed
Yes.
illness that you're not disclosing, and all of a sudden, a week or two later, you get dropped from your insurance coverage. And anybody that
Yep.
knows about family care insurance, one, it's expensive, and two, to get a good plan, it's hard to do. And once you get denied by one, it's like you're denied from all of them. And that is just a
Yep.
couple of data points that goes up in an algorithm in the big pool of data, and that an AI system will be making decisions that impact your life because the data that you just freely gave away when you accepted the terms and conditions of whatever application, or just to use the phone, they'll hit you with these terms and conditions. So for the embedded apps, as soon as you hit OK, accept, agree, check the box, it's over for you. And that's what people are
Yes.
not realizing. So,
Yep.
but Ryan, when you're
Yeah, and for
asking,
adults,
oh, go
I
ahead.
mean, think about identity theft, right? So, I operated with a clearance for a long time back in early 2000s. China hacked the whole OPM. They got all of our
Sure.
SF-86 clearance
Yeah.
forms, right? And so, for listeners that don't know, when you fill this thing out, you've got to say everywhere you lived, all of your family, where they currently live, somebody that you knew in all of the places that you
You
lived,
lived in, yeah.
all of that data, right? And that's all the data you need to voice verify into a bank account, right? And so, years ago, I woke up to an email from USAA Bank. It said your $9,900 transfer has made its way out of your account. And I woke my wife up and I said, "Did you move money out of the USAA account? Because that's where the kids' college fund was." He's like, "Why would I do that?" Immediately we got a call from USAA fraud department, and they caught it. But then I got four more calls that day from USA,
Rinse and
or,
repeat it.
or four more emails. And I was like, "What is going on?" And they said, "Well, somebody's voice verifying into your account." I'm like, "Well, lock my account down." "Well, we can't. There's another account owner on the account." I'm like, "Yes, that is my wife. And she is sitting right next to me, and she's not doing this." And so they come in from mine with my information and her information, and voice verified in there. And so now you take this latest data leak, and you've got a social security number, date of birth, and addresses. And so, like, yeah, if your users don't have their credit scores or their credit reports locked down, like, everybody needs to lock those down. That needs to be the steady state. You open it up when you need it, and they've made it very easy. Um, but then you add this other stuff of location data, where somebody works. That there's so much that can be done in terms of criminality, just basic identity theft criminality. That for adults, like, yeah, I want to hide that. I do not want people to know where I bank.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want that. Yeah.
Ryan, the problem is much bigger than most people know because, for example, I'll share just for less than 48 hours ago, I had an alert where one of my cards, which is a very secure MasterCard that I have, was somehow they mimicked the card and they duplicated the card and it was trying to be used in Pakistan. And so, of course, the fraud department called it. I got alerted. They already had mailed me another, express mailed me another
Yeah.
card out. But the physical card itself had been compromised somehow. And I travel globally a lot. Like just in the past 3 years, I've been to over 45 countries. And again, when you're, paying for meals and so forth, you think you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but it doesn't take much for someone to
Yeah.
scam your card, make a duplicate of it. People don't understand. It just takes 2 points, as minimal as 2 points of data to start correlating and building up context of who
Yeah.
you are and what you do. 2 points
Yeah.
of data, they can find you with 2 points of data. If they get two or more points, the more points of data they get, they can build a full profile of who you are, what you do, your movements, the things you like. I mean, it's commonplace that people talk about, oh, I was talking about dog food the other day, and all of a sudden, all my social medias is advertising me dog food. Well, that's the phone and devices are always listening to every
Yeah.
conversation you're having. People, but maybe not everybody watching this right now understands that. But your phone, whether it's Apple, Android, whatever it is actively listening to you. And hence, if you're talking about something with your spouse, your partner, your friends, your coworkers, it ends up becoming part of your advertising feed because it goes back into the big machine and it starts pumping the ads, targeting the ads to the
Yeah.
things you're talking about. So that right there is wholesale surveillance against end users. And you opt in for this when you decide to
You agreed to it.
use.
You
Yeah,
agreed to be listened
you
to. You
agreed
don't
to
know
it in
that
the
you
terms
did,
and
but you did.
conditions.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. A lot of people, your time is valuable. Individuals don't want to sit and read all these legalese because it's worded in legal speak where a lot of people are not going to even understand it. Even if they try to read it, they're eventually just going to give up
Yeah.
and go, okay, yeah, just give me the thing. Let it do the thing I want it to do. But see, what I really admire about what Unplugged's doing with their upphone is that you already know that from the beginning, from ground up, they started with your privacy and your protection of your data and your data sovereignty in mind. So that right there is the ethos of what they're starting with. That is the foundation, and they're building on that. And that right there is to be commended because one, it's an uphill battle for a business to change the mindset of people of privacy to one, to try to educate them on why it matters. And that's why, when Ryan is sharing that use case about his own impact where his identity got stolen, the SF-86 thing. I laugh with my colleagues all the time because the report, I think the official report said it was like 60, 70, or 80,000 records. No hacker goes in and says, give me 60,000 records. They exfil
No.
everything. And so
All.
if you had a clearance from that time frame and prior, they got a copy of your SF-86. And you know what? I don't necessarily trust those organizations that retain all of our SF-86s to have fully eradicated that threat. So it's very, very probable that they still have access to even current SF-86s, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We're going to try to stay focused on this. So there's a term that a lot of businesses that are in this space, just like Unplugged is, that is starting to become real big, especially in AI. And since, AI is not really what we're here to talk about, but it's important because Samsung now has an AI enabled smartphone and Apple now has AI. I mean, they've always had Siri, so that is one form of AI, whether people realize that or not. AI has been around a lot longer than you think. But all these systems that are doing these automated processes and the analytics and the stuff that they do in the back end that you're not aware of, data sovereignty is a term that's starting to come up more. I had a conversation recently with the founder and CEO of Ask Sage AI, Nick Shalon. Very fascinating conversation where one of the tenets of what he's trying to achieve is the data sovereignty for users and organizations. But in terms of the individual, we want to bring it back down to the purpose of what Unplugged's the problem they're solving. How would you explain to folks what data sovereignty is and really why it should matter to people that are watching?
Yeah, one of the things that we talk a lot about is the fact that the intersection of the First and Fourth Amendments are getting abused by our own government, right? So this everybody's like, oh, they re-upped FISA. They didn't re-up FISA. They like reinforced, massively expanded, and then approved it for a bunch more years, right? The the gist of the new FISA stuff is any entity that has electronic storage of things can be compelled by the government to give that data over for national security reasons under a national security letter, and they're not allowed to tell their customers about it. And I heard some things. Somebody's like, "Well, it's not like it's locked up in your basement in your filing cabinets anymore. It's up in the cloud." Well, but it's still like this is still mine. Um, the where I go, who I talk to, what I say, what I surf, what I look at, whatever, right? The Supreme Court has been solid on this. There was a things like, oh, you've used public infrastructure, so you should have no expectation of privacy. And the Supreme Court has come back and they've struck that down, and it's like this is a privacy issue. Another thing I think people don't know is like the phones know what you're going to do before you do it. Based on how long you paused on something, like before it even registers in your noggin that, oh, I want to go there, or I'm going to make this right instead of this, or I've heard this song came on and it does this behavior. Right. It is such an extension of our individuality. If you don't think it's important to protect, like I don't know that there's a whole lot that I can do for you, right? And it's literally about putting the data back in your control and not saying, it's that same old the other axiom, right? If it's free, you're the product, right? And so that's the thing, right? If you use free services, like it costs a lot of money to have a lot of servers running at high throughput to do computation to put things up. And so if it's free, they are collecting from you because they're going to monetize. They have to monetize something, right? Unless it's a big charity.
Yeah, there's no
Last time I
there's
checked,
no businesses out there
Google's
like
not a big charity.
yeah.
They make billions of dollars in profit every year. So if it's free, you're the product, and so we're coming back, and but we've had some pushback. People are like, oh, your phone's too expensive. Well, it's $989, and that comes with 1 year of our paid subscription for the VPN, for the Messenger, for the antivirus, for those things. Right. So then you take that $129 off, and it's it's an $850 phone in the United States.
In the United States. And again, I think there's the hurdle, the mental hurdle for a lot of people to get by is like, you got to look at it. What is the price of your privacy? And so people at first, they'll, like I said earlier, they'll be like, I ain't got nothing to hide. Well, you have a house, people apartment, a house, condo, you have somewhere where you live, at the end of the day, you call home, and you have doors, you have windows with blinds, shutters, a privacy fence, you put a lock on your front door, right? That means you care about not just your security. The blinds on a window have nothing about securing the window. It's about privacy. You don't want
Yeah.
someone just be able to just peep in your house at night while you're sleeping, or enjoying your time with your family or your spouse. In fact, you lock your bedroom door when certain intimate things are happening that you don't want public to the world. You go to the bathroom, you shut the door because you expect privacy when you're in your home. You expect privacy when you're in the bathroom, on the toilet, in the shower, when you're dressing, undressing. Everybody has a right. Let's just start there. Everybody has a right, and definitely the expectation of privacy in their own homes and in the comforts of their homes. Even sometimes people expect privacy in their cars too. But here's the thing. When we start talking about the data, people seem to lose that perspective, right? Your data is just as important as the blinds on your windows, just as important as the lock on that bedroom door. Would you want a camera and something listening to you doing any activity you're doing in your house? Well, guess what it is. So let's
You
start
got
there.
Alexa, you got a phone.
Your
Yes,
phone, your
yes.
Alexa, Siri, all those things are listening, actively listening. There's already been reports and leaks of the reports of like people back at whether it's Apple or other language processors where they have heard people having intimate relations and so on forth. This has already been put out in the press. So this is not, I'm not revealing anything that's classified or so forth. This is all open source information. Just do
Yep.
some searches on it. Don't take my word for it. Google, Siri conversations or Siri intimate details heard by analysts. So there are people that have access to it that could listen to your intimate conversations and so forth because it's actively listening. And all this stuff is being sent back to a server where it can be analyzed. It could be, the data could be manipulated to their purposes and gains, not yours. And so people have to start getting the right perspective on why data sovereignty, your data should be your data. And again, when it comes to like legal things, like when, if you're having an investigation and your information being pulled, you should be notified of that. It's akin to when you mentioned the Fourth Amendment, it's akin to having a warrant. That's
Yeah.
the expectation as an American is that if someone's going to come in my house and want to search my house, what do we all ask for? Officer, do you have a warrant? Until you have a warrant, sir, have a nice day. That's usually most Americans, at least most Americans that care about their privacy would say. But then why does it end when it comes to your phone? Why does it end there? Why does it end? And so I
I
just
don't know why it is.
implore,
I don't. Yeah.
I really implore people watching this, just do a couple quick Google searches into why privacy should matter to you. In fact, there is a report, a security research report that gives a few use cases of why privacy matters and gives you a good perspective, which I'll make sure it's in the link below. But I want to get back to Ryan because see, Ryan is really what I invited him to be on this podcast because it started with the discussion of unplugged and privacy. But I really want to give you insight to who he is. He's already shared a little bit about his career and that he's still working and he's still working what I would call in service of the American people. And I applaud you, Ryan, and everybody in your company for this. But with everything I've said repeatedly about having to go over these hurdles with people's psychology and perception of privacy, really, what motivates you? I could get that as a group, Unplug is trying to do something great for people, but what motivates you? What drives you day to day?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, like Unplugged is a part of what I do. Um, Look, I think there's three things that I would say that motivate me in a large way. Um, One is trying to find people that I can have really good, deep, and disagreeing conversations with. I think it's an art that is lost in our nation, and I think we're seeing it, we're feeling it, the effects of it from our political perspective, and surrounding myself with people that differ in opinion from me and get to a place where right this concept of like we've invested enough in each other's lives that we have the right to be heard from the other person, even if we don't agree with it, right? And so this idea of putting together a foundation of civil discourse in the nation so that we can talk about things like privacy and it not become a political thing, right? So we're getting a little bit of that, right? Because Eric is a very conservative guy. I vote more conservative than I would liberal. But my best friend Todd Huffman is about as libertarian as they get, and we spend a lot of time actively disagreeing on things, and like we'll just use privacy, right? People say like, oh, this is just a right-wing phone, so they can't get caught saying bad things. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there were a lot of people after January 6th that were in the Capitol grounds, never went into the Capitol, went up there for a political rally. And I will tell you that the FBI followed every single one of those people that they could get a mobile ad ID on and figured out where they came from and where they went back to, right? And so to try to get to a probable cause kind of issue, right? And there are people on one side of it that be like, well, they should. And I said, okay. So when Roe versus Wade was turned over and certain states started talking about criminalizing these things, would you be willing to then have your locations or a geo box around every abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood in the nation to capture who goes in and out of those things? A gun show, a political rally, whatever it is. And people don't think that the balance of power and the political thing is not going to change sometime. And right, these laws are now in place that the whole government can use at their discretion to start investigations. Right. So like being able to have those kind of conversations with folks and get to place. That's one thing. That's one thing that makes me that I'm passionate about. The other is trying to foster the next generation of entrepreneurs. I think small business is such a powerhouse for our nation, and having innovators, people that want to get out there and interact with technology, different trades, whatever, right? So pouring into folks that want to try their hand at starting a small business. It's the most exciting thing I've ever done. Very rewarding, building small teams and doing great things. And a third is my kids. So that's the thing hard for me. I've got two adult kids. They're out in the world being adults, and
I can definitely identify. Both my daughters are a senior in university, and they have one more semester to go. And as young adults enter into the world, I was a single parent for 17 years until they went off to college. But your children are what you truly leave behind. You can build companies, you can amass large bank accounts and assets, but at the end of the day, when you turn to dust, your family is what you leave behind, your true legacy, and you want to make sure they're always protected. I can tell you that again, there's much more that could be discussed on this episode regarding what can be used in your data and really, really horrible use cases. But I'll leave that for the individual watching to go do your own digging on this. At least spend 5-10 minutes just doing a little bit of queries and searches on this, because you don't have to trust Ryan, you don't have to trust me. It's the information's out there for you to get. And when he mentions about all these potential cases and prosecution that can happen just because your proximity to something, right? It doesn't mean that you was one of the bad perpetrators or you took aggressive actions. And again, I don't look at privacy as not a Republican or Democrat or anything in between issue. It is a human being issue. If you're a human with a pulse, it's an important issue to you. It doesn't matter your political leanings, okay? Privacy does not care whether you're liberal or conservative, right? That doesn't matter here. It matters you are what matters. Being and more so than just okay. So there's a human being aspect which affects everybody on the world in the planet. But then being an American, as America, we lead the world in what democracy is supposed to be. Our Bill of Rights, our freedoms, and when these freedoms are slowly eroding away, and then all we're doing is helping that erosion of our freedoms and rights. That's where people need to be educated so they can stop participating in the erosion of your rights as an American. And so I implore anyone watching, just do your own searches. Don't take Ryan or mine's word for it. 10 minutes of searching can save you a lifetime of potential risk and compromise to you as an individual.
And I try to post a lot of those articles on my LinkedIn profile, right? So that's the one thing that's like I want to get people to see it, right? And then we've got several blogs on our website, unplugged.com as well. And that's exactly it, Jim. Like people need to educate themselves. And if they think any of these companies have your best interest in mind that are collecting this data, they don't.
No, they don't. You mentioned something earlier. If something's free, they're making money off of it somehow. And the first thing I thought of was like Fortnite. Fortnite is a free game for everybody to play, right? But there's in-game purchases and once you buy something, they have your credit card, they have your billing address, they already have a lot of information on you. They already have your IP, so they already know where you're gaming from. They've already built enough information on you what is the big thing in the gaming industry is getting doxxed, where someone puts your information, they put an FBI SWAT team, and you get swatted, right? And so that's just from an IP address and just another point of data to correlate where that person is. Geolocation, geofencing, which is referring about the abortion clinics or any other facility that somehow comes under the eye of Sauron's scope of new cases or new things they deem as a threat to national security. You might not have nothing to do with the true activity that they're looking for. So we're not advocating against perpetrators or people that are doing bad things. We want our Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, we want all those agencies to be able to operate like they need to. But we also have a judicial system that is to protect our rights as American citizens. And so, we have to be very aware of how these things are slowly, essentially, I say the word erode, but it's actually just outright removing your rights. Once your data leaves you, as you said, it goes to a public infrastructure, they own you. They can use any of that information and build a case against you. And most people say, well, I'm not doing nothing illegal. I'm not doing anything bad. What do I care? Well, this is what I say. How many people do we get these stories throughout the year that got exonerated because of new DNA testing, got exonerated because of new data, new evidence that was made available? Because they're going to look at it through the lens of, this is what we have. This is the case we're going to build in the context. And context is everything. And they may get it wrong. But to you, once that court system starts and the charges are made, that can take 1 to 5+ years of your life away, drain your savings.
Yeah.
But most people will say, oh, but it'll never happen to me. What do people say on the news reports when there's a terrorist found in their neighborhood, a child predator found? They're like, oh, well, so-and-so was always quiet. They never think it can happen in their neighborhood or town or to them. And you got to realize it's all about your attack surface, your risk that you're accepting when you say yes and opt in and okay, agree, yes on the terms and conditions. No one's reading this stuff. No one's being made aware of it. And of course, companies aren't going to be promoting awareness about this because it doesn't behoove their interests. So again, Ryan's put a lot of great information here. Companies are not in service of you. It's like, okay, here's a great analogy. When you go work for any company, they're like, oh, we're all about our people. Well, what happens when you see something wrong and you try to go through? Has there been a long, great history of whistleblowers in our country? Ever? How many successful whistleblowers can anyone name? I'll wait.
Yeah.
0. And so you try to do the right thing, you get shut down, you get in, they'll put the lawsuits on you, and next thing you know, you're gone. You have no income, you have no job no more. But oh, they're all about their people, right? People look at HR like, well, HR is my friend. HR is not your friend. They're usually made up and tied closely integrated with the legal team so that they can protect the company. The company will always come first before you as an employee. And so, what makes you think that your government, what makes you think these organizations that operate in service of our government and third party capitalist based companies and corporations have your best interests at heart? Their bottom line is their best interest at heart. And so people got to understand, you got to take ownership of your data. You have to take back the control of your data. And you can't do that just going down to the Apple store or going to a Samsung store. It doesn't start there. In fact, anybody that's in security, because I know a few security professionals are going to be watching this at this point going, I already know how to root my phone. I already know how to remove the embedded apps and this. Well, great for you because you're a security professional. You
Absolutely.
did your time educating yourself to know the things to do and the processes and
Absolutely.
steps to take. Because it is not something that the average person can do or even knows about. A lot of people watch this right. I just heard the term rooted for the first time. Like, what does rooted mean? And
Yes.
so rooting a phone is
Google Pixel with
basically,
Graphene OS is a great solution. It's a
yeah.
great solution.
And
My
so
grandmother could never have done it.
no, and there's so many people, small to medium-sized business owners have no clue. And there are things yet that, again, we're not going down rabbit holes, but like corporate espionage. Big businesses want to know what small startup businesses are doing because where is innovation really happening? Small to medium businesses are taking the risk, are funding those big ideas to cause digital disruption and transformative type of emerging technologies. And what do we hear about every day? Oh, Microsoft just bought this company, or so and so just bought this company. That's all they're doing. They're so big, they don't need to develop nothing new. They just got to wait till someone else does, and then they go in and they buy out the company. Acquisition is big with the bigs out there. They just, and that's what happens. That's the nature of business. And these businesses will come out with an innovative idea, and it'll get bought. Now, whether or not that company uses that technology, sometimes you just buy it so it won't become a competitor to any other service that they're in-housing. Again, their interests will come before you as an individual. So I want to come back to you, Ryan, because there's
Sure.
there's 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 a lot more that I'd like to talk to you about, and I know you shared a little bit about your career, but I kind of want to take the time machine and go way back to a younger Ryan. Not saying that you're old, but a young Ryan. And I know you served our country in the Marine Corps, but what was day one like when you said, "Hey, I want to do IT and comms and technical stuff, cyber. I want to do." What was that story like for day one for you?
Yeah. So always an affinity for math. I thought I was going to be an aerospace engineer. Did that for 2.5 years at Virginia Tech. Decided I didn't want to do that. Then thought I was going to probably be a high school
Shout
math
out to
teacher and a
Virginia
wrestling
Tech,
coach.
one of our best
Virginia Tech.
universities for mathematics. So sorry to interrupt.
So that's where I got my math degree. And let me get rid of that AirPod. It's going to fall out. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, good. So anyway, and then I was not the greatest college student in the world, like barely got out. And so the Marine Corps actually was like, well, I got to have a job when I get out. And so I'll get a commission in the Marine Corps, do 4 years. I'll let me grow up a little bit. And then I thought I'd go teach and coach. And that's almost what I was going to do. And then the Marine Corps sent me to get a second degree in mathematics. I say mostly because they said like, you barely got through your first one. So let's give you a second one. And so then went to the Naval Postgraduate School, got an applied math master's. And that took me to the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. And the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab took me to DARPA. And so I would say that for me was where I started to get very interested in, it's not just cybersecurity, it was, sort of information flows in general and innovation around those things. And so yeah, that would have been 2003. Sort of coming out of the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, I went to DARPA on an internship. I was supposed to be there for 90 days as a director of the agency's military interns. And talked my way into a program manager, stayed for 4 years, and went from there. And so that really was it for me. And for me, it's not only the innovation in the technology, it's also the innovation in the business ideas. And I mentioned earlier those days at DARPA the first time, the performers on my project were all small business owners, and really got fascinated by that idea of like, what would it be like to start your own thing, have an idea, and go from there. So yeah, I think that was it. But math, physics, calculus, chemistry, right? So I've sort of always had that mindset.
I love it.
Not so much with English and
You
the
know,
others.
math is going to become more and more important as we move into a quantum era with computing, right? And a lot of folks are not going to understand the level of like these new, NIST about a week ago, 3 days ago now, released the three documents on the new FIPS. I think it's 203, 204, 205, I believe. Anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's the new three that is going to be the post quantum cryptography algorithms.
Mm,
What's funny is no one's saying quantum proof because they can't say it legally. The proper term is quantum resistant, but they're using the term post quantum cryptography. Still to be tested, and there are more algorithms being tested in the background because they know that if any of those three fail, they need to have a runner up real quick to serve.
right,
Um,
right.
but Ryan, I want to kind of get into what I call my speed round when I'm doing these type of
Sure.
interviews because I like to have a moment of levity because we've been talking a lot of stuff that should really be frightening to a lot of folks, but I kind of want to inject some levity. These are what I call my rapid fire questions. I just throw a couple questions to you. There's no right or wrong answer, so just whatever the first answer comes to your mind, okay?
Sure.
Okay, first one up, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars, 100%.
Star Wars, all right. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes. No, no, no. I'm a hard
It's
no.
it's a confusing one, right? Um, Cake or pie?
Pie all day
What
with a
type of
scoop of ice
pie?
cream on top. Apple pies, a la mode.
All right, that's a great one. What's one of your favorite books you've read?
I just read Byron Towell's Means of Control. Phenomenal on this topic specifically. So
Good.
it was great about sort of this from the Patriot Act forward and all of these things. Byron Towell's Means of Control. Anybody listening that was interested in this topic should read that. It was great.
Well, if you could send me the link to it and the title of the book, I'll make
I
sure I'll
will.
put it down below to save you to search. It'll just be in the description below for you to click and get that book. What are some personal projects? Because obviously, job one is, unplugged.com, but what are some personal projects, whether boards that you sit on that you're passionate about, nonprofits, work that you may do, or any personal project? Is there like a website, personal website, or other thing that kind of shows, other things you care about?
Sure. My LinkedIn page would be the place you can figure out what I care about. Uh, One of my biggest passions is being on the water, and so out on the water. I live in Tampa, and so being on the boat, being out in the water, really anything surrounding the water, fishing, scuba diving, whatever. Um, Organizations, yeah, I sit on a few boards. So I still sit as an advisor to 26 Technologies. I'm on the board of a company called Amatrine that I think is really interesting. So they're thermal signature management. So think about camouflage clothes for soldiers that protect them against thermal sights. And I'm really into their mission, the technology, and they're a ton of really fun people to hang out with. Um, Also working with the former founder of Wicker, Nico Sell, and she's got a company called Tempest. And so it's Tempest with the E's being threes. And so she's doing autonomous electric jet skis. And so, the goal for her is she's a big wave surfer. And so like, you don't want to necessarily have another human on a jet ski in danger of a big, and so she can drag herself in, she can tow herself in with the jet ski, no rider on it, ski, and then push a button on a boat and the jet ski comes back and picks her up. And so that's a cool project.
It's
Um,
really cool.
yeah. Organizations. One of my favorite organizations in the world is Young Life, and my friend Andy Fetzer has been there forever, and they're passionate about high school kids, and they're the ones sort of coined that you've got to earn the right to be heard before you can start saying stuff, and that means showing up at things. Yeah, those are the things that I'm interested in.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, please, message me all the links to all those wonderful organizations. I will definitely include them
Sure.
in the description below so people can find out more about the great work that they're doing. Ryan, I know we need to wrap up because your time is super valuable, and I know we ran over time with this because this is a discussion we could have for hours and hours and
Of course.
hours. And but like I said, there's only so much time that we have in our day. I will definitely, if you don't mind, share your LinkedIn profile in the description below so people can connect with you, and also the Unplugged socials as well down below, because
Sure.
people get educated, at least get educated enough to be aware of the risks that you're incurring in your day-to-day life. Because if if you still, after watching all of this, and let's say you do some searches and you end up coming back to, well, I don't care, I'm not doing anything wrong, that's fine if that's the conclusion you come to, because at least you educated yourself, you read a few articles,
Yeah.
you understood the risk. And if that's a risk you're still willing to take, then this is your own life journey to go forward in life with. But what I'd like to do now before we wrap up is I'm going to turn it to Ryan for his final words about why privacy should matter to every, not just every American, but every person on the planet, why privacy should matter.
Yeah, you've made the point, right? I think it's one of the basic fundamental human rights that we have. It's enshrined in our Constitution. It's a thing that we have seen when large swaths of the population around the world lose their ability to be private. Not good things usually come out of that, and yeah, and I think that this idea of data sovereignty is like, this is my life in this phone, the people I talk with, all that stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's a fundamental human right, and people should embrace it. But it takes some work.
Takes work. Well, please, if you've got to this point of this conversation, check out the links in the description below. Follow Ryan on LinkedIn, because again, him and Unplugged, they're doing phenomenal work on behalf of the American people and really people around the world with the focus of privacy, because not a lot of companies out there are in it for you. And this is a company that is in it for you. And I know a lot of folks and experts out there will naysay this or that or have their own perspectives how to approach security. But the ultimate question is this, is that not everybody knows how to root a phone. Not everybody knows how to do all the technical settings. And not everybody is designing and building something for instant privacy right out the box, right? So it takes a lot of knowledge. It takes a lot of steps to do that. Yes, it can be done, but it does, the
Sure.
majority of people, period, aren't that technically savvy. And of course, in the process of doing some of these things, everyone knows if you make a mistake in rooting a phone, you could brick the thing. And so again, is it worth $1,000 for a flagship phone to be bricked, right? But what is it worth to have your privacy, to take control of your data? That's priceless. To me, that's priceless. So again, thank you, Ryan, so much for giving me your
Thanks,
time
Jim.
today. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation on privacy. And for anyone watching, check out the links below. And with that, that has been the Top Cyber Pro content podcast. So thank you so much, Ryan.
All right. Thanks.